What's up, everybody? Welcome to We Have Cool Friends, the show where we interview our cool friends about the cool things they're doing in their cool lives. I'm Greg Miller, and this is today's cool friend, Trisha Hershberger. Hey!
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming through. I'm very excited to have you around. You did Games Daily today. That was cool. You did a great job, as always. You came out there. We needed the hot takes. You had them.
That was really fun.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You don't have to lie. You can.
No, we talked about some really heady stuff.
Sure, yeah, a lot of independent contractor stuff, right? A world you know well.
Work ethics.
Talk to me right now. So like I told you right before we went live, show's still in infancy right now.
Okay.
I've been treating them a lot like up at noon interviews, right? Where I would, in the middle of the show, I jump in and talk to people, and everybody had a great time. But somebody's called out recently, Greg, since they're your cool friends, you do a bad job of introducing them. You just start talking to them, and I have no. Trisha,
okay,
how do you describe yourself to someone who's learning about Trisha Hershberger for the first time?
I make videos on the interwebs. So I have built my career doing on-camera hosting for channels much larger than my own, but I also have my own channels.
Sure.
And I primarily talk about technology and video games.
Perfect. You nailed
on the
it.
internet. Yeah. So currently I host shows for Newegg, Kingston Technology, Geek and Sundry, and Caffeine, but that's like a constantly rotating because freelance.
Sure.
Because the freelance hustle, and you take jobs, and then it's the entertainment industry. So even really awesome shows will have an end date in mind, and then you move on to the next project.
And that, I think, is where I want to start with my questioning of you.
Cool.
How do you do it? People always look at kind of funny, like, oh, you guys do so many shows. Oh, man, 4 podcasts a day. This is crazy. Blah, blah. Like, sure, that's a hustle, and that's tiring, all this different stuff. I can't imagine what your Google Calendar looks like in terms of all these different gigs and Newegg and this. And
I'm gonna show you.
I can't imagine like how fast you've got to be moving, what you've got to be. Like, yeah, that's bad. Like, ours is bad, but it's also like me and Kevin getting breakfast is on one of our things. Like, we're at least stationary for most of the days. Like,
yeah.
How did you get into this? Did you set off a long time ago and said, I want to be a nerdy host?
No, because that wasn't a thing a long time ago. So I've been doing this for a while, and when I started, I got a degree in classical theater, which is a degree that I don't think people should waste money on, and I wouldn't recommend because...
Where'd you get it from?
DeSales University, which at the time when I started there, it was called Allentown College, and it's one of the better known theater schools on the East Coast. So it's in Pennsylvania, and they partner with the Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival, so you can get internships with the Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival, and then have EMC points towards your equity card if you, and that's the guild for stage.
Okay. Cool.
So it's like SAG, but for stage.
Gotcha.
That's the very oversimplified way of putting
That's all we need here.
But yeah, so I, graduated, and I was like, man, I can do Chekhov and I can do Shakespeare. And then I promptly moved to LA and realized nobody cared about any of those things, and had an agent tell me to take my bachelor's degree off my resume because it aged me.
Oh, wow.
So I got slapped with a dose of reality in the entertainment industry real fast, and came out to LA, and my basic rule was, if it pays and I get to keep my clothes on, then that is a job I will take. And that's how I ended up being the Hamburglar for years for McDonald's events, like anything. I have no shame. I was like, give me the Barney suit.
Are those photos on the internet?
There are, but because I have a head on, you would never know it's me.
Oh, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, it was like full head mascot work, and I'm really short, so that worked out really well for me. But yeah, I mean, if the job paid and I got to keep my clothes on and it was somewhat performance related, I wanted to take that job. So I also ended up doing like auto show spokesperson work for years. If you go to your local city auto show and see the people standing up on the spinning stage with the car.
Let me tell you about this Ford Eldorado.
Yep, did that for years, like anything even adjacent, because I just wanted to work. Sure. And I wasn't having much luck in the more traditional like commercial TV film, because I moved out to Los Angeles and didn't know anybody. And a big part of it is who you know.
So wait, full stop.
Full stop.
You grew up in Pennsylvania?
I grew up in Pennsylvania.
And I'm guessing early on discovered you had this acting bug and you're doing the school plays and
I watched a lot of movies as a kid.
Okay.
Gone with the Wind was like my favorite movie as a little kid, which is so weird.
Yeah,
like I dressed up as Scarlett O'Hara for the Halloween parade when I was 5 or 6 and made my dad be Rhett. And I like gave him his line he had to say while we walked past the judges. Like I was that kid.
Wow.
But yeah, so that was the bug from way back. I just knew I wanted to perform. I wanted to entertain. And then, so fast forward to being out in LA and not having a ton of luck in the more traditional entertainment scene. Also because I was really short and kind of quirky when quirky was not in.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So this was way in like the early days, kind of as G4 was just up and coming.
Sure.
Not even really a thing yet. So traditional Hollywood looks at you and tries to type you into different categories. And people didn't know where to type me. So I was having a hard time. And then I kind of tripped and fell into YouTube, as I like to say it. So one of the many auditions I went to was on a Saturday morning. And it just said Untitled Online News Show. And I was like, great, this will be fine. And it said prepare 3 stories. And this is like world news, like not fun news like you and I talk about now, Greg. This is like world news. So I prepared 3 news stories on index cards and I went in and I said my piece and it was fine. And then they asked me, what do you know about tech? I was like, what? But at the time, I was working for Samsung's IT department as my day job.
Oh my God.
So I was like, yeah, I can tell you whatever you want about tech. Like, I got this. Because tech was just a hobby of mine that through doing spokesmodel work at CES led to a full-time job because that's how things happen. And then they said, and do you play video games? So like, I think they said, what's your favorite video game? And my answer was PC or console.
Nice. Dominated it.
At this time, I didn't even know that like having a career in gaming was something that was even a thing.
Well, I mean, with all due respect for talking about where you're putting it, like it really wasn't yet, right? That was the thing of like people. I was talking to some people over the weekend about what I do, and it was cool. So you're like you're a host. I'm like, well, yeah, but like that's not how it all. And like, how did that start? And I'm like, well, I came out to SF to write about games, and then the job evolved into the camera work. Like I remember like how weird it was to have Chobot at IGN, where it was like, wait, she just hosts stuff? Like that's what? Like why is that a thing? Like why are we doing that? Like that was like the perception people had. So even when G4 started, it was like, what is this? How are you? This ain't gonna work.
Yeah, it's crazy to me now that people will go to college saying, I want to have a career in games journalism, because that was not a thing when I went to school. They say actually a lot of jobs that people have 10 years from now probably don't even exist now. So for those of you considering higher education, keep that in mind. But yeah, so they asked me all these questions, asked me what books I read and what movies I watch. And this is usually the part of the audition where I fall flat on my face, because in hosting auditions in Los Angeles at this time as a female, you get asked, so what do you know about the Kardashians? And I was like, honestly, nothing. And so this is where I would lose the job. Like my read was fine, but that's not my area of expertise at all. And this was the first audition that I went into, and when I said, I read this author you probably haven't heard of named George R.R. Martin, and because this was way before the Game of Thrones TV show was a thing. And when I started saying the stuff that I was into, and when I asked PC or console, I noticed them perk up. And I left that audition and I thought, I don't know what this audition was really for, but I think I nailed it.
Definitely was, yeah.
Whatever it was, I think this was good. And then a few days later, I was called in for a screen test for a YouTube channel that had just started, which eventually became known as SourceFed. At that time, it was still called 20 Minutes or Less.
Oh, wow.
So very early days.
Yeah.
And I got started being brought in as a fill-in host. At that time, there were 3 main hosts on SourceFed, Joe, Elliott, and Lee, for anyone who followed that channel. And I was brought in if like Lee had a dentist appointment and couldn't be there that morning or something like that. And that was world news. But I learned after they asked me if I wanted to come on full time that they were developing a nerd channel, SourceFed Nerd, and they wanted to bring on personalities that could develop content for that channel. Now, up to this point in my career, I had only done the front of camera stuff. So asking me to develop content, to come in and write my own stories, and I didn't have a degree in journalism. Like all of this was brand new to me. But I was so thankful for the opportunity that I jumped in head first.
Oh yeah, totally.
And it ended up working out. I was at that channel for 3 years, and that helped me to build an audience to the point where I could then go freelance and work other places. So after that job, I worked for about a year developing content for The Escapist, and then I moved to Comic-Con's network, Comic-Con HQ, and did their daily news show, which incorporated a little bit of everything.
You had to work with that Carboni, though.
I love him so much.
You know,
I love him so much. Anthony
clear glasses.
Carboni.
I hate that he's nailing the clear glasses.
And he nails it so well.
Hate it. He's too good looking.
Nobody else in the world can rock clear glasses like
he
Anthony
rocks everything.
Carboni.
I mean, anything he rocks, he can rock. That's the problem.
You know
what I mean?
he's like super good with kids. Like Carboni he's an amazing human being.
I'll find something on him. Don't worry.
And now he's a Star Wars guy.
I know, right?
Like, how
He's a
lucky
Star
is
Wars
he?
guy. He's very well. He worked really, really hard, right?
He does work
Yeah.
very hard. Yeah, he's a super professional, and I love him to death. So yeah, I got to host a show with him for Comic-Con HQ, and then before that, actually, I had incorporated and started my own channels. But after Comic-Con HQ's exclusivity ran out, and I started being allowed to work for other places, I diversified, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And it's lovely because now I get to come here and do fun things like this with you, and talk about games sometimes, and talk about tech sometimes, and talk about movies sometimes. I get to keep my hands in a little bit of everything that I'm passionate about, and that's awesome. It kept me from burnout, where sometimes when I was full-time at an outlet before,
Sure.
I would feel a little burnt out. So
Same thing day after day, right?
Yeah, it's nice to switch it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have lots of questions for you. But first, I want to get the housekeeping out of the way, of course. You should subscribe to this show, youtube.com/kindafunny. Remember, We Have Cool Friends is available as a podcast. You can get it on iTunes. You can get it on patreon.com/kindafunny, ad-free. I don't know if it's on Spotify yet. Probably not, because I feel like everybody would have tweeted me, because that's a big thing you've been asking for. We're aware. It's in Spotify's hands. We're trying. You know, Kevin, how's it going over there? You trying?
I'm pressing all the buttons, you know.
Thank you. Kevin's pressing all the buttons. He's doing what he can. We're aware, but it's on other podcast servers as well. I want to thank our Patreon producers, Robin, Gustavo, Lindri.
GL.
Huh?
It's Robin GL.
Robert GL. Oh, Robin GL.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That I remember this from the other show. Alec, Bobco, David, Mindtel, Antman0208, DJ Kento. I also want to tell you we're brought to you by Upstart and Zebit, but I'll talk to you about that later. Trisha, you talk about avoiding burnout now and how it was happening a little bit there. What I want to know is how did you avoid packing it up and going back to Pennsylvania when you get out here with your degree and you think it's going to be awesome, but you move out there, you know no one, and you're the Hamburglar. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? How many times are you inside that helmet sweating to death, being like, I'm out. This is it.
You know, it's just being stubborn.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just being stubborn and thinking, you know, I moved out here with the thought of I'm going to live in a cardboard box and not be able to pay any of my bills. And that might last for 20 years, and that's okay because I'm pursuing what I love. So just naive idealism all over the place. And eventually my hard work paid off, and it was definitely when preparation meets opportunity kind of moment that I told you about, where they just happened to ask me things I was interested in at an audition that I probably might not have even gone on. Like, you never know. And I remember one of the first conversations you and I ever had, Greg, where you were asking me how I got into working in the video games industry, and I kind of told you the truncated version of that story, and you were like, oh, so you got like really lucky. And I'm like, yes, I 100% did, as opposed to someone like you who started in editorial
I got really lucky too,
and
though.
print work. Well, we all got really lucky to some degree.
Yeah.
But you were set to work
Laser
in video
focused.
games.
This is what I was going to do.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what you want to do. Whereas I always say, like, I kind of tripped and fell into it.
Yeah.
And just, I found a part of the industry where I was allowed to just be myself. And that was something up until that point I had not experienced at all. I was always going to auditions trying to fit in a certain box, trying to be a certain type. And this was the first time that people were like, just be you. Because if you're not you, people are going to smell it from a mile away. This is the internet.
The beauty of YouTube, right? Yeah.
The beauty of the internet. Just be yourself. And to me, that was so freeing and wonderful that I thought, this is where I want to stay.
Oh, we started angling. Sorry.
Yes,
Kevin's good at his job. Don't worry.
Thank you. Then I thought, that this is what I want to do. So even though my degree was in classical theater, and people now ask me a lot of times, like,
do you miss it?
Yeah, do you miss it? Do you want to start auditioning again? Like, would you love to take the Olivia Munn route and branch into feature film acting?
Please avoid the X-Men film. Well, now they're going to be Disney X-Men films. Maybe it'll work out.
Maybe. Who knows? Although if someone offered me that opportunity, I would obviously
Are you kidding me?
say,
I would get into a Fox
yes,
X-Men
please.
film in 2 seconds.
Right? 100%.
Greg,
yes.
we've recast the Blob. You in? I'm like, here I go.
I mean, for God's sake, I was the Hamburger Griller for 3 years. I'm not very picky. I would take that opportunity. But yeah, I mean, I I don't want to do the rat race again of driving all the way across LA in LA traffic to be in a room with 65 other women that look exactly like me reading, yes, please, I'll take the French fries in a million different ways and hoping that I get the gig.
Yeah.
I have really, my goal setting out was never to be famous. My goal in coming out here was to have a job that I enjoy. I don't want to be in a cubicle hating my life 40 hours a week. So there are lots of different jobs that could fulfill what I enjoy, ranging from, you know, voiceover to, like I said, to being a spokesperson at an auto show to talking about video games and TV and movies, like so many different things. But I feel like I have found that. Greg, what was your goal trying to get into this? Like, were you thinking specifically video games? Were you thinking I want to be famous?
Oh, no. I mean, my story is tried and true and old for many viewers. But, you know, I had an issue in the 4th grade of Game Pro. And on the cover was Death and Return of Superman. On the inside was Maximum Carnage. Every night I came home, read it cover to cover. And finally, after a month of doing that, it dawned on me that an adult got paid to write this. Yeah. And so I marched into the kitchen with it and I said, Mom, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to write about video games.
Yes!
And she said, okay, we'll make that happen. And so then I went the journalism route. Because again, you mentioned it earlier, like there was nobody knew how to do this. You know what I mean?
No.
Like even when I would get a response back from Dan Shu, he's like, yeah, journalism would be good. Like it was like, how do you do any of this? So I went and did that. And that was my thought process on it to get out there. And so when I got to IGN at 24, I think I was 23 actually when I moved out, right? I was like, done it. I've achieved my life's goal. I'm writing about video games. And like, then it was like, oh, I guess I have to think up another one and do something else. And it was, and then it still is be the Grand Marshal of the Mizzou Homecoming Parade.
There you go.
So we'll get there eventually. But yeah, then it all just happened organically, right? And that was the whole thing of, you know, everybody who we've brought on the show and everybody you just talk to in general in the industry talks about imposter syndrome. And like, that is such a thing for me, first off, starting in my career in games journalism, of going to events and being next to Dan Shu, you know, talking to Jeremy Dunham, doing all these different things. And then when I actually met you, I think at VidCon, right? When I went there for that first VidCon, and it was like, cool, I know nothing about YouTube. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I do a show for IGN that's now exclusively on YouTube. So now I'm here to learn about YouTube and try to get people onto the show that are YouTube people. But like, Tim had to always be like, all right, this is Phil DeFranco. He's a big deal. So say, okay, cool, whatever. You know what I mean? Or like, hey, hey, Ashley. And Tim would grab me like, all right, she's met with Bernie Burns. He's a co-founder of Street. I'm freaking out. Don't you freak out. I'm like, oh, why would I freak out? I don't know what's happening. And it was that thing of, okay, cool. But like to talk to you guys and like, especially learn about what you had been building and how everything had been going and meet people like Justine, right? And I remember for the longest time sitting around being like, man, I fucked this up so hard. Like I should, like, cause I always talk about it before I came to IGN, I had a video game column and blog for the local paper. And one of my videos of the first PS3 leaving the Walmart, I filmed and put it on my blog and used it for coverage. And the video blew up, and it was the first time I had ever gotten an email from YouTube like, you should monetize this. Do you want to monetize this? And I remember like, what a weird thing, and deleting and never thinking about it. And so when I got to VidCon and was leaving that VidCon thinking about starting my channel, which would become kind of funny, it was that thing of like, I fucked this up. Why didn't I turn the camera around and talk about video games? Why I could have millions of subscribers like Phil, like Justine, like, and it was that thing of, man, I fucked it up, not realizing I had been doing that in reverse, just building it at IGN, like you're talking about, of having a platform and building something there and building cachet, honestly, in myself in a way I didn't understand until we left and started our own thing and found that the success we have. And so, yeah, it was a super weird trajectory for me. I never thought any of this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was never what the goal was.
Right. Like, how often in interviews do you get asked, like, so did you start with your own YouTube channel and then grow to, and it's like, no. Yeah. No, I didn't. I started on Philip DeFranco's YouTube channel that he created called SourceFed. But I was the same as you. I didn't really know a lot about that world going in. Like, I remember, I think it was the second day I was in studio for SourceFed, someone had said to me, oh, have you met Phil yet? And I was like, Phil.
Totally.
Like, I got hired for online news show. No clue. So you learn about that world very quickly. And then I think, you know, it takes a special person to learn about that world and say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that for myself. I was probably a year and a half into SourceFed before that light bulb went off of, I've been doing this all wrong. I write the content. We film it on a plain white wall. Why am I not doing this in my house?
Yeah.
And that's when I started my YouTube channel, which fortunately or unfortunately, depending how you look at it, I always prioritized my hosting gigs before my own personal channel.
Sure.
So I didn't invest the time and energy in the way that you guys have to this channel. So it remains like my baby side project that when I have spare time to post there, I do.
But that's great because then the people who are following you there and watching those videos are the core fans, right? They're the ones that are going to follow you anywhere you go.
Yeah, one would hope. But my personal channel is also weird because at the time I had a non-compete on the types of content I could make.
Yeah.
So I couldn't talk about gaming or tech or movies or comics or because SourceFed Nerd covered all of those things.
Welcome to the origin of Kind of Funny.
Yeah, right.
Where like IGN was like, you can do a YouTube channel. You cannot talk about anything you cover here.
So you guys just did funny hangout times.
Right, yeah. It was a conversation with Colin where we talked about everything not video games and not comics. And then it was Oreo-ration where I reviewed Oreo cookies. And then it became the Game Over Greggy show where we couldn't talk about anything that IGN would ever want to talk about. And then we talked about things IGN definitely didn't want any of their personalities talking about. And then we'd be pulled into rooms of like, why the fuck is there a headline, why don't Americans wash their butthole? I'm like, well, why don't we have bidets everywhere?
Because, bidets are amazing.
Yeah, exactly,
Side note. But yeah, so my channel became this like weird kind of vloggy thing, which you were on, The Naked Truth. But a lot of people that follow me there, I feel like follow me for more lifestyle driven content. So when I put a random gadget review or some gaming stuff on there, it's a smaller portion of my total subscriber base that is interested in that. It's funny because my likes to dislikes are always amazing on those videos, but less eyeballs overall.
Sure, yeah.
And it's very funny to me when people who are not familiar with the work that I've done over the years go to my channel to see who I am and they think I'm a vlogger. I'm like, no, super not true. So I try to playlist all my stuff there so it acts more like an online resume. But now a lot of the work that I do is not local to YouTube. A lot of the stuff that I do is on Twitch. I just started hosting a new show for caffeine.tv.
Yeah.
And I think that as content creators, we're very lucky that there's so many different platforms out there now because we can really diversify. And should something happen like bye-bye Vine, all your eggs aren't in one basket.
Right. Yeah. That was, when we started this company, that was one of our big things for revenue streams, right? Of like, we had the Patreon, we have YouTube and AdSense, we have Twitch, like, and it's the idea of we're not trying to be greedy about it, obviously, because like we're small, but it is that idea that, guess what? Tomorrow, like it's happened. Patreon changes something and you see a precipitous drop, right? Of like, oh, suddenly we're making you pay for the credit card fees person. And they're like, no way. And they bounce. That's a huge problem. We didn't want it to be that we would be in free fall and we would be, taken out right away.
Or like a lot of creators were hit with YouTube's adpocalypse.
Of course.
I just had a viewer who has become a friend tell me that his VR channel was completely demonetized without being told why and stuff like that. So if anyone's listening that wants to get into content creation, diversify.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to. You have to, right? And I think, it's even though you're downplaying it, having a place for people to go for you is so important. Right. I think that I look at Andrea, right? And I've talked to her, Andrea Renee, of course, who, if you're watching live, has announced she's moving to LA and we're all very upset.
Except for Trisha, who's very excited.
Well, everyone in LA and everyone pretty much not me and Kevin is like very thankful. Oh, good. John got a cool job at Disney. Yeah, great. Yeah, exactly. Right. But that was the thing for Andrea. I always thought is that for so long she jumped around doing so much great work, but it was that thing of like, where would you go to get like Andrea being pure Andrea, right? And that's why What's Good has been so great, I think, for her and for Steimer and for Britt.
So good. I love that channel. Huge shout out to What's Good. If you guys don't follow them, you should. But yeah, I remember Andrea one year tweeting out that like her media badge for E3 didn't get approved. And I was like, oh my God, here's this person that has done so much wonderful work in the video games industry. But because it's not under her name as the headliner, like how tragic is that? So yeah, What's Good does amazing things. And now we can look back at that day and laugh.
We're laughing right now in your face, E3, trying to ban me. Get out of here. So talk to me a little bit about it. So you're talking about not having the rat race of casting calls, right, for acting gigs. What is it like for you now to be an influencer host, whatever you want to call it, in LA? Because I was talking to another influencer host in LA who will remain nameless, but she was basically like, it's rough right now. It seems like there's fewer gigs than ever, and it's more people than ever going out for them.
Yes, I would say that's definitely the case. Now that it is known to people who are getting started in their career that this is a job that you can make money at, there's a lot more competition. Yeah. And especially as a female, and I'm sure as a guy, you probably experience this a little bit too, but as a female, it's very prevalent that, well, we can get someone much younger and cheaper than you. And so you're combating that as well. But yeah, it's a lot of maintaining connections and networking and hoping that your work speaks for itself and your professionalism speaks for itself. And I don't know. I mean, for me, I was inspired to have a job that I have fun doing from the Tom Hanks movie Big. that was my moment of saying an adult got paid to do this. Watching that movie, I was like, he gets paid to play all day and I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ride this wave for as long as I am fortunate enough to have work. And I always tell my husbando that someday when all the hosting work dries up, because inevitably I'm sure that it will, I might just full-time Twitch stream.
Yeah, right.
Because I love it. I love it so much. It takes me back to being a kid and playing video games with my friends at my house because local co-op was all there was. There was no online co-op. And now my couch is just a lot bigger. And it has a lot more people in it. And it's my Twitch chat. So that is my happy place. And I spoke about this on a podcast recently, but there's a difference when you talk about creator burnout between saying, oh man, I have to make another YouTube video or I have to record this podcast versus I get to stream video games.
Right.
And that has kind of become, for better or for worse, my mentality in regards to YouTube versus Twitch. I feel like I'm obligated to upload for YouTube because the algorithm can be so punishing if you're not uploading constantly. Versus Twitch, where I'm sitting down in my gaming chair to play games, and there are people that hang out with me while I do that, and it's fun. And I think maybe because I haven't thought about it as a business, and well,
that's when it all changes.
Yeah, I don't really care if the game that I'm streaming is going to bring in more eyeballs. I probably should go out of my way to collab with more streamers that will help swap audiences, but because I don't think about it as a business, it's just my me time.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, if I went Twitch streaming full time, I would probably have to start thinking about some of those things. But in the meantime, it's just fun. So should hosting work dry up, that'll be the case. But yeah, hosting work and even traditional, if you can even say traditional influencer work, social media advertising, the whole landscape on that is changing.
We were talking about it beforehand. Steve Zaragoza, right? He put up the tweet the other day of just like, hey, there's not that much happening at Comic-Con for influencers and stuff. If you're looking for a thing, and I was like, man, Steve, I think of it, and I know Steve, obviously. Steve and the Valley folk are such the top of the game. It's weird. It's weird for me, because we're SF, right? Like we get influencer deals, and I do hosting, obviously, and all sorts of crazy stuff. But it's not the bread and butter, right? Kind of Funny is the bread and butter. This is 90% of my time, and then it's the random, hey, do you want to host this Comic-Con? Oh, sure, whatever. Yeah, and I'll go do that. Whereas it seems like for if you're in LA, and maybe for Steve in particular on his tweet, right, it seems like it's more of a 50-50 thing as he's trying to do all these different things.
Yeah, I think the breakdown's a little bit different for everybody. I think like my last year worked out to be something like 70% hosting income, 20% influencer, and then the other 10% was like my YouTube and my Twitch and kind of all that extra stuff that comes in from there. But yeah, as the landscape changes, I feel like you just got to get on the surfboard and ride the wave and go with it and hope that you can earn enough to make a living. And I haven't done the Patreon game yet, but I know you guys do. And at some point, maybe I will venture into that territory too. But yeah, it's very interesting to keep an eye on. And Steve, before he did that tweet, texted me and was like, hey, have you heard of any influencer work going on at SDCC? Because a lot of times I will get approached about work that for one reason or another may not be right for me, but I'm always happy to refer friends that I know will do a good job with it. Because I believe in paying it forward, and what goes around comes around. And someday I feel like that may be work that comes back in my lap at some point. But also because then I feel like I get to maintain a good relationship with whatever brand. Like just before we recorded this, a friend of mine who works for a very popular brand that I will not mention called and said, hey, I have an influencer deal for SDCC. Who do you think might be right for this? And that's a brand that I do continued repeated work for. So I'm happy to help them in that process because I know at some point they will reach back out for me with something. And yeah, it's just being as professional as possible.
Well, I think that speaks to such a core value that attracted me at that first VidCon to what YouTube is, or it was, or I think still is, right? But it was this line in one of the panels I'll never forget that like, there is no competition. There's just collaboration. Like, don't ever think of another channel or another personalities or whoever is like being your competition. You need to beat them. It's just a chance to collaborate with somebody. And ever since we left, or I left that panel, like that was my mindset. And that was like, I think you saw a definitive turn in my career even before we left of like, oh, so I'm popping up on Giant Bomb more, right? Or like as soon as we were gone, I was over on GameSpot. Like there was different things of these people who I think traditionally, and because when I came into IGN, like GameSpot wasn't allowed to talk to us at events. Like, you know what I mean? That's a way different GameSpot. That's a way different GameSpot.
Wow,
Nobody who was a part of that works there anymore. But me and Brad from Giant Bomb now will joke around about that every so often when we run back together. Because like it was a different thing of it was Jets versus Sharks. Like you didn't interact. And it was such a leaving that VidCon of like, oh, right, that is such an old mentality that doesn't help anybody in the long run. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, it's definitely more like once you kind of understand that, like if I collab with another tech channel, it's not an either or situation. Yeah. People can subscribe to both. Hey, and if you cover similar types of things but in a different voice, there's a good chance that they will subscribe to both. Yeah. So you're only helping each other.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing that was saying all of that, it still was when Easy Allies was getting ready to start. And it was like, okay, cool. Like we had been the first, like one of the first big Patreon success stories, but knowing they were about to happen, it was like, okay, what's about to happen when they come to Patreon? Are our numbers going to drop? Is our revenue? No, it didn't, right? Like our kids who wanted to be their kids supported, and then they brought in a whole different audience that was suddenly like, oh, well, I'm going to support other people on Patreon, and they went and found us.
Heck yeah!
And it's been awesome to see that continue to happen and continue to grow and continue to collaborate on that level.
And I've also found that within the kind of digital scene of content creation, people are very humble and very respectful and very willing to collaborate, which is a marked difference from what I hear the traditional scene is like. And I was recently speaking with the lovely person that does my hair and makeup on my caffeine show because I'm lucky enough to have a hair and makeup person on that show. She was saying what a big difference it is working with digital talent versus traditional talent because people, her experience of it was that, people can seem entitled or, very demanding, whereas everyone in the digital scene is just so like, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And I find that when I talk to other digital creators, like it's all like, oh man, we do the same thing and not that many people do what we do. So let's be friends and talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. The few occasions I've had where I've seen the difference between it, I wonder how often it comes down to just the differences in the business models in general, right? It's what you're used to. And so like when we'll have actors or something, not even for kind of funny, but for more like Up at Noon back in the day who would want to come through and do stuff. It was like suddenly, all right, cool, we'll talk to my agent. We'll now talk to the manager. We'll now give me an itemized itinerary of what we're doing on the half hour. And it's like, all right. And then meanwhile, if you brought up a content creator, it was like, cool, can we do other stuff? My plane doesn't leave for another 45 minutes. Yep. What can we film? What can we do? Can I vlog here? Can I do this? And it was like, oh, cool. Like, I don't even have to ask you to promote it. It's just what we all naturally do because that's what we all naturally do, right? Yeah. Whereas if you're bringing in someone from outside of that world, they treat the content so much different.
I did that with you when you were at IGN. I think I had been flown to San Francisco to do a guest spot on D News and a guest spot with Rev3, and I was wrapped by noon. Yeah, Carboni. I was wrapped by noon, and I don't think my plane took off until 5. Yeah. So I just texted probably Sean Finnegan at the time, and was like, hey, I'm in San Fran and free till 5. Do you want me to come by the office? And he was like, yes, we'll put you in stuff. And I think they just threw me into 2 videos with you, maybe even. And it was just like, awesome. Yay, I'm here. So exciting.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about, right? Like, that's what it'll happen all the time. Mega Ran? Mega Ran is coming through for We Have Cool Friends in a couple months, but Mega Ran is the classic, hey, I want to be in town on like a Sunday night, can we do something? I'm like, I can't make everybody, I'm sorry, you know what I mean? Like, it's like when I can't do the, hey, I'm doing a crazy, I'm here, can we do, and I'm like, no, we're booked all day, or this is happening. It always breaks my heart because I don't want anybody to ever get the impression that we're like, no, we're strictly scheduled, but then you see the calendar and it's all locked on the hour.
You guys are busy guys. I imagine your Google Calendar looks much like mine.
It does, but like I said, sometimes it's just get breakfast with Kev.
Yay.
What's up, Kev? How you doing over there?
Hey, I'm pretty good.
Flapjacks or omelets?
Great question. Usually. Yeah. I would go omelets on that one,
Okay.
Breakfast burrito on the street's real good, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem. That's the problem we run into.
All right, closed on Mondays, though. I found out today.
Yeah, I know that one all too well. It sucks.
Now I'm hungry.
Oh, your food's in the other room, so once I release you from this, it'll be here. But you're not released yet. Don't worry about that.
That's great. I'm having fun.
I want to talk about the biggest collaboration you've probably ever been a part of. You have a child.
Yes.
That's what I think. When I think of the plates we all spin in this job, right? In this world, to then hear you talk, oh, well, the Twitch stream and this caffeine show, and I was like, all right, yeah, sounds a lot like. Then there's a human being that like relies on you for everything that you're also juggling in the middle of all this. How's that going? How old is this kid now?
He is almost 2.5.
Oh my God.
Which is crazy because everybody says it goes so fast, but the best answer I've heard for it is the days are long, but the years are short.
Ooh.
Because when you're in the throes of it, it is work. Like they tell you it's work. And at least for me, I was like, I am an overachiever, multitasker. Like I got this. I'm not worried. It is so much more than I could have ever prepared for as far as the amount of work and how hard it is. So my hat's off to anyone listening who's a parent. Your job is not easy. But, I'm still figuring out how to navigate it. And it's funny, if I was at a job for 2.5 years, I wouldn't say I'm new at this job, but I still feel like a new parent because I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing.
Every day there's a new thing.
Yeah.
Just when you got the handle on it, he starts walking.
Then it completely changes. And I mean, it's extra tough for me now because he's still at an age where everything he does, he could accidentally murder himself. So it's very, like I can't sit at my laptop and answer an email. Because if I look at my computer for 3 minutes to formulate a thought, he could be dangling off the edge of the stairs, like whatever. He's very curious and I'm very grateful for that, but it's tough and it's been tricky for me navigating the work-life balance, especially since he's been in the picture, because before I erred on the side of not having a very good work-life balance because I love what I do for work. Sure. So it makes it very easy to work all the time.
Yep. Oh, I know that one well.
Right? And then you have a tiny human that relies on you for sustenance and you can't work all the time anymore. And so navigating what that looks like moving forward it has pretty much changed as often as he's changed. Yeah. Because I still work as much as life will allow me to. And I'm very fortunate for the work coming in. But it's tricky. I mean, did you see I'm sure you saw the video of the gentleman who was on the news broadcast from his house and the kid came bounding in the background. My husband and I laughed so hard because I was like, that's totally going to be me. Like one day that's totally going to be me. And I even tried to do an episode where I was a Skype-in guest. And I want to say it was Game Talk Live when that was a show. But my nanny called out last second and I was like, you know what? It's a 1-hour broadcast. He should be napping then anyway. He was not.
Of course not.
So I put like a pack and play and him just off camera and got him a passy and some toys and fed him before we went live and all this kind of stuff. Long story short, screamed his face off the entire show. And so I just had my mic on mute whenever I wasn't talking and smiled and nodded. And anytime they cut away from me, I was like, it's okay, buddy. Like trying to deal with him and then sit back up and act like nothing happened when they cut back to me. Yes, I agree with that. And then, like it was a full-on disaster. So I learned that I can't do that anymore. But that being said, some people's kids are easier than that, I hear. And
that must be nice.
Right? Like if you're friends with Lasercorn from Smosh Games, like he told me, oh man, having a kid's awesome because you can just like, they'll fall asleep on you, you can just play Switch. Games, yeah. And I was like, that never happened for me. I'm glad that happened for you. That never happened for me. I think I got Final Fantasy 15 right when I was, I forget what point in my pregnancy, but I was like, man, my 9th month, when I like can't move anymore, I'm just going to sit there and play Final Fantasy 15. It's going to be amazing. Never did that. That didn't happen.
Why? So, you had to keep moving around?
He was moving around, but I was also trying to like navigate the terror of being a freelance contractor who is now pregnant. And, not every show wants a pregnant lady to talk about video games, surprisingly.
So that's, so walk with me. Let's go back a few more than 9 months, right? I'm assuming you always wanted kids. Was that the idea?
I always wanted kids, and I was super naive and thought, like, I used to tell people, I want 6 kids. I want a baby zoo. I'm gonna have so many kids. Yeah. And talked about it very nonchalantly. And when I wanted to do movie acting, still, I was like, I'm gonna pop out a baby in between each film, and don't tell me I can't do it all. I can do whatever I want. Like I said, very naive and idealistic. But yeah, I always wanted kids, but that being said, having this career that I love so much and knowing that it's probably not everyone's dream come true to have a pregnant lady talk about video games and technology on the internet, especially at that time, was very daunting.
I was
and
going to
really
say,
scary.
yeah, like I have to imagine, like, especially knowing how hard you work. You've already talked about being a workaholic, or, you know, the work-life balance.
Yeah.
To then get to the precipice of this decision, right? Especially because, again, and the realities of you are an on-camera host, and you understand that, the internet sucks, and there's going to be people who just don't want to work with you because of it.
Yeah. So I kind of used Jessica Chobot as inspiration, and I was like, you know, she made it happen, still killing it. So it doesn't have to mean that my career's over. Despite when I was in theater school, they did tell us if you haven't really made it by the time you're 26, especially as a female, your career is kind of shot. So this was the kind of stuff that I was thinking going into this next phase of my life.
But you skated right by because you were 24. So
of course, yeah, totally. But you know, I used Jessica as inspiration, and I said, you know, she's proof that it can be done, and I can do it too. And my husband and I had originally, you know, it's easier when you talk about future plans to say yes to things before they're right in your lap.
Sure.
But we had said, you know, okay, after we get married, we are going to pull the goalie, so to speak, and just we're not going to be trying, but we're not trying, and we'll see what happens. And he, God bless his heart, saw me still taking the pill a couple months after we were married, and was like, "Hey, what you doing?"
Was it one of those like you're frozen? Like,
And he was like, I thought like, do we need to have another conversation? Is there something with our relationship? Like, you know, his mind goes anywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's not that at all. At
just
that
E3's
time,
coming up.
I know. Well, and that's exactly where my brain was. Like, I was like, I just got this new show with Comic-Con HQ, and I really like it, and I don't want to lose it, and, you know, all this stuff. And anyway, after a long, hard conversation, we decided there is no time that's ever going to be right.
There's never the right
Like,
time.
my husband was like, do you foresee a future where you're not working and saying, now's the time to do this? He was like, I know you. You're a workaholic. You're always going to be working, so there's not going to be a perfect moment. So let's just leave it up to fate.
Yeah.
Which is what we did. And then, you know, we were obviously very excited when it happened, and I navigated it as best I could. I got on the roller coaster and held on.
Yeah.
And it was scary because about halfway through my pregnancy, and I still hadn't really told anyone or announced it because I was able to hide it. About halfway through my pregnancy, that show got canceled. And so here I was 5.5 months pregnant looking for new hosting opportunities, which was exactly where you don't want to be for anyone listening. And so then I had some like really good people inquiring now that my exclusivity was up, and we would get so far in negotiations and kind of like verbal agreement, but nothing written had been signed. And I would say, you know, at this point, I feel like I need to tell you that there will be a human coming out of my vagina sometime in February. And at that point, almost all of those conversations ceased to be. And it was really sad for me. And I say it was probably a year slow period. So all my regular jobs that I had were lovely about, you know, be as pregnant as you want on camera. We don't care. Or if you want to hide it, we can, you know, adjust the set. You can be seated behind a table, whatever. And I was able to work some regular gigs through the second half of my pregnancy, and after I had the baby, I came back pretty soon to my regular gigs. But as far as like new potential opportunities, there was about a 1-year dry spell.
Wow.
And that was rough.
Yeah.
And so when people ask, like, do you want to have another one in make-believe land? Sure, that would be great. But in the reality that is my career, I don't know that I want to take that career hit again.
Yeah.
So it's tricky to navigate, I feel like, for anyone, but especially being on camera and being the person who has to deal with the pregnancy, it's a little tougher.
I forget, did you hide it the whole way through?
I hid it until about 7.5 months.
Okay.
And I had many conversations with a friend of this show because I saw her on your wall, Felicia Day.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were both having secret pregnancies at the same time. She's over there.
Yep, there she is. Sorry. Well, I saw Andrew. I was like, wait, wrong redhead. Wait, look.
But I had actually filmed something with her brother, and he was asking me a lot of questions about my pregnancy. And I was like, wow, Ryan cares a lot about my pregnancy. But then Felicia and I connected after that. She was like, I hear you're having a secret baby too. We should get together and talk about our secret babies. So we did that. And after many conversations about like, why are we as women who work on camera scared to tell people? Like, we shouldn't, you know, very like, we can do this. I had the moment where I kind of ripped the mask off and was like, surprise! Here's my big belly. This is not a drill, I think was my post. And she was like 2 or 3 weeks before her due date when she announced it to everyone.
Yeah.
But I also got to the point where I was on a Twitch stream where it was a tabletop game. And so we were seated kind of like you and I are right now. So the camera was seeing me from side view.
Yeah, that's hard to hide.
And my favorite comment was someone in chat went, "That gut though." And I was like, yep. That gut though is growing a baby, but nobody knew.
Yeah.
So I bet it looked like I had a big old beer gut from partying over the weekend or something
she took the
like that.
Comic-Con HQ cancelization really hard.
Exactly.
She's been on a bender.
Exactly. It was very, very funny. But yeah, so then I announced it, and I held announcing it because I didn't want people to have time to think that my brand was going to change, because just because I had a kid didn't necessarily mean I was going to pivot to family content or mommy blogs or anything like that. And that's because at that time I was still really contemplating, children's privacy and how much do I even want to talk about or show him. Like many questions I hadn't really dealt with yet at that point, but I knew that I was having a great time producing the kind of content I was producing, and I didn't want to change that. And sure enough, the second I announced it, I got like bottle warmer companies and stroller companies all reaching out for brand deals. For this moment. And it was very funny when I was like, so I don't know if you know this, but my demographics are like 80% male because I cover tech and gaming. So I may not be the best person to hawk your bottle warmer.
Yeah.
Nor do I really care. Like, I can't get excited about a bottle warmer. I'm sorry. Like, even when I was in the thick of that was just not my style. I bought stuff because I needed it to get through my day-to-day routine, not because I was like stoked about a bottle warmer. Now, that being said, weird parent devices, yes, I can get behind that.
What's a weird parent device?
I don't know if you saw at CES a couple of years ago, this device called Mother. It was like this creepy little robot that you held cookies in front of, these like fobs. And it would do like household tasks or reminders or stuff like it.
No, I don't like this.
A little bizarre.
I don't back this one.
Maybe it helps many people. I found it very bizarre. And that kind of stuff is very funny to me. So like I wouldn't mind spreading awareness about that. But of course, in my own way, like they would have to be okay with me being like, look at this weird thing. But yeah, it's certainly been an adventure.
Yeah.
And definitely weird in the content creation space. So Lasercorn of Smosh Games fame and Ivan Van Norman from Geek and Sundry and I actually started a very, very niche YouTube channel called Nerds with Kids.
I remember this.
Where we talk about, and we still do it as often as we can upload between other jobs. We basically have a play date with our tiny humans, and sometimes content comes from it and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But we talk about these things that are like specific to content creation as a career, and how do you balance that with having a kid. Like, this sounds so silly and most definitely first world nerd problems,
sure.
But like, I can't watch Game of Thrones at 6 p.m. because my child will be scarred for life if he sees it. And also I have to watch him. So like I can't live tweet and give my full attention to that.
Sure,
so I was like, I have to wait until 9 p.m.
Oh my God.
Go on social media, I'll black out. For years, I had been live tweeting this because I've been a fan of the books for over 2 decades. And, but I was like, I have this tiny human now and I can't do that.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? Like it was this big crisis for me. Again, so silly, in the grand scheme of things.
But I mean, that's that personal stuff you have to deal with, right?
Yeah, issues like that I think are content creation specific.
That's always the thing about it where, Jen and I are going to have kids, obviously. Love of my life, Jean-Vive Sinos.
You want kids, yeah.
Cool. But it's that thing of when I am having the bad day when nothing's gone right, you know what I mean? And I'm being snippy and short and I just want to play a game, you know what I mean? And I'm not being mean, but I'm like not being who I want to be.
Right.
I think about that of like, cool, like, you can be a little baby right now if you want, but when you have a legitimate baby, like you can't do this anymore. Like you can't be an asshole. You gotta that's gotta be the first priority, and you've got to put it ahead of everything, and you got to do all these different things
all the time.
Which then scares me. Am I ready to have a baby? If I'm like, I want to play X game today. I was supposed to play Division all day today, and I can't now.
Grumble. But yeah, I mean, I think no one's ever ready for that transition, and that is one of the biggest reasons why it's so hard to have kids, because for, however many years, you and your wants and needs have been your top priority. Sure. And now all of that completely has to shift to another human. And not like just 40 hours a week, like all the time. Now, if you're fortunate enough to live near family, I don't know if you guys have family close by. We don't either. But
cheers to getting away from them,
No, are you kidding? If my family lived close, I would have no problem seeing the most recent Spider-Man film because I could just drop him at grandma's.
Yeah.
But I don't have that luxury. So I'm forced to say, do I want to hire a nanny for X many hours so that I can go see Spider-Man?
Yeah.
And I'm already struggling with how expensive childcare is. So having a nanny for the amount of hours that I work during the week, it seems silly for me to be like, oh, he's been at daycare or with a nanny because we do a balance of both. He's been in some form of childcare 5 days this week. Do I really want to add a 6th just so I can see Spider-Man? That feels selfish. And then
Sure.
I'm also have this weird mom guilt about not spending enough time with my child. And it gets really bizarre. So especially like, oh man, X new game comes out this Tuesday. Nope.
Yeah.
Not playing it on release day.
Yeah.
So what I do, my me time thing, and I recommend for you and Jen when you get to this point in your life, of kind of finding what your me time thing is.
Okay.
Mine is streaming to my Twitch channel every Sunday morning. And so I have 3 or 4 hours every Sunday morning that I just play video games and I play whatever the heck I want to play. And that is my me time.
Sure.
And my husband watches the baby. Because that's the time that I get to like peace out and be selfish.
Yeah.
For a few hours. And
And that's
it.
important, right? Like, I mean, I feel like getting away and having that moment to just worry about what you want to worry about is what it's all about.
It is. And for my husband, it's his guitar lessons.
Oh, nice.
So he gets to go and be creative and have a couple hours to himself where he plays guitar and, zens out and whatever he needs to do. But it's so important. Because otherwise you're just like, oh man, the next 18 years of my life are probably beyond that. Realistically, I am just a slave to another human. And that's kind of what it is.
Every so often I'll think about it. I'm like, I should start prepping for whenever we're going to have a kid and start trying to get like the 4-hour sleep now. Like, what if I just start playing games
get
now
all
and
the sleep you can.
I just destroy it now and I just don't know what normal is anymore.
Yeah, get all the sleep
No,
you
that's how I
can.
should do
No,
it?
because that first year, I feel like for most parents, you're in zombie mode every day.
Yeah.
Because you're maybe sleeping 2-hour chunks at a time if you're lucky. Now, everybody balances who does the night wake ups differently. So, you might be the parent in that situation that gets 4-hour chunks of sleep at a time, which is lovely. I chose to breastfeed, so I was up every 2 hours, like it or not. Anyway, but yeah, it's rough. And speaking of choosing to breastfeed, let me just tell you, being at E3, being at CES, sitting on a public bathroom floor, milking myself with a pump, because there's nowhere else to do it.
People
is
walking by
not
like,
fun.
you're like, hey, yeah, Trisha.
Yeah,
how are
not
ya?
fun.
It's me right here.
I'll tell you, my first Comic-Con that I brought him to, we did a full family cosplay, which I don't recommend. It was so much work. But I built the cosplay.
What was it?
We were Star-Lord, Gamora, and Baby Groot.
Nice.
So I had full green body paint while trying to deal with an infant. So anytime my hands touched him, the green went everywhere. So dumb. But I built the Gamora vest to be breastfeeding accessible.
Nice.
It was so silly looking because so there's a white tank. If you're unfamiliar with what her look is, it was from,
I've seen this photo. Let me try to.
I don't remember if it was the Guardians 1 or the Guardians 2 look. I think it was Guardians 1. But there are seams right around her boobs that I put zippers into.
Nice.
So I could unzip and pop one out at a time. And she has a tank top underneath and I cut holes in that so that I could legit just unzip and feed. For easy peasy, but I was all green, which I didn't think about ahead of time as far as ease of being able to feed my child.
Kevin,
And
I'm throwing it to control for.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
See, you can see exactly where those zippers are. You can see exactly where those zippers are. And then he hated his Groot hat, and I measured his head and made it, and not realizing how fast babies' heads grow.
Yeah.
And it didn't really fit him by the time we got there. So then he was just like a baby in a jumpsuit. Like it was ridiculous. We tried.
I threw you a long Facebook link there. That's the entire family.
Oh, and yeah,
It's coming.
yeah, look at that. Doesn't fit him at all. And he's so miserable. He was super not having it. So I wonder, it might be in a gallery somewhere on there, but I have a picture of him just in that jumpsuit screaming. He's so unhappy. And I was like, I'm a horrible parent. But I tried. This is part of the struggle of like, how do you still do the things that you like to do, but also then as a parent. And I do think there are parents who do it much more successfully than me. It's been a struggle for me, but I'm figuring it out as I go. And the same will be with you and Jen when you go down that path. path. You'll figure it out.
This kid, like it or not, is dressing up as Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and I'm going to be in my Ghostbusters outfit.
I think that was his first Halloween for us. We did that because because I learned from the Guardians of the Galaxy cosplay to just make it simple.
Yeah.
A Ghostbusters jumpsuit is way easier than that whole Gamora getup.
Oh, yeah.
And he was way more comfortable in his Stay Puft outfit than as Baby Groot. So
I love it.
keep it comfy. Keep it comfy.
I have more parenting questions from you, but first I'm going to tell you about our sponsors. We're going to start with Upstart. As most of us have found out the hard way, getting into debt is easy. Getting out is hard, especially if your FICO score isn't great. Thankfully, now there's Upstart.com, the revolutionary lending platform that knows you're more than just a credit score and offers a smarter interest rate to help you pay off high-interest credit card debt. You know me, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's your first time. When I first moved out here, I had to take out a loan, and I had a really bad interest rate. This would have been very helpful for me because Upstart goes beyond the traditional FICO score when assessing your credit worthiness. They actually reward you based on your education and job history in the form of a smarter interest rate. Upstart believes you're more than just a credit score. They believe in you, and they understand that. They make it fast, simple, and easy to check your rate in just a few minutes without affecting your credit score. And the best part, once the loan is approved, most people get their funds the very next business day. Over 200,000 people have used Upstart to pay off their credit cards, student loans, fund their wedding, or make large purchases. Free yourself from the burden of high-interest credit card debt by consolidating everything into one monthly payment with Upstart. See why Upstart is ranked #1 in their category with over 300 businesses on Trustpilot, and hurry over to upstart.com/morning to find out how low your Upstart rate is. Checking your rate takes only a few minutes and it won't affect your credit. That's upstart.com/morning. Up next is Zebit. No one likes zero anything. Like when you break your phone and lose contact with the outside world. Zero calls, zero text, zero social media. Honestly, life without a phone means pretty much zero everything. And having zero of anything is hardly ever a good thing unless we're talking about Zebit. That's Z-E-B-I-T. They'll change your whole perspective on zero forever. A better credit option is what Zebit's all about. Zebit provides a better credit option for those who need it. They allow you to buy what you need and pay over time interest-free. There's zero cost to join. With Zebit, there's no cost to join, no membership fees, and no late fees. Zebit doesn't check your credit score. Zero impact on your credit score as well, as Zebit doesn't affect anything. It's got a huge marketplace. Zebit has everyday items at everyday prices. They have more than 50,000 products in their marketplaces with brands like Xbox, Sony, Apple, GoPro, and Fitbit. From electronics to barbecue, furniture, and more, Zebit has everything you need when you need it. Zebit has a 5-star rating on Trustpilot, and they've earned the trust of more than 1 million customers who shop on Zebit. Sign up for a Zebit today at zebit.com/morning and get $2,500 credit to shop the Zebit marketplace at zero interest with zero cost to join. That's zebit.com/morning for up to $2,500 of interest-free credit. Don't be like young Greg. Buy your TV here and don't have a really bad credit fee again, as I'm talking about. Zebit.com/morning. So we just showed a photo of your baby Groot, right? Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about this at the front. Being who we are in the business we're in, of being personalities, being front-facing, sharing our lives with the world, how did you come to terms and what is your social media plan for your baby?
Great question. It's something that I constantly go back and forth on, and it's because I think initially I was of the mindset of keep him off of social media. Mm-hmm. Like I will say, yay, I'm so excited I had a baby, and then, my brand is my brand. It is not him. And then I started having to keep up with content on a daily basis that wasn't really genuine to what my days were looking like at that time. And so then I felt myself in this weird place of, am I lying on my social media now? Yeah. If I'm doing something like, just binge blah, blah, blah Netflix show. No time to binge anything anymore, so can't have a conversation about that. Or, feeling cute, might delete later. No time for selfies. Are you crazy? But most of my days, I was no makeup, no bra, in PJs all day. Lucky if I had a chance to shower. And that was my real life then. But again, I didn't want my brand to become mom stuff. So it was very bizarre for me to try to navigate that.
This is a huge shift in your life and career, right?
Yeah, a huge shift. And so what ended up happening was I scaled back on the amount that I post to social media. So I'm not active on every single platform every single day, unfortunately. I'm starting to get back to that now that he's a little bit older. But I try to keep it so that my social media does not ignore that I'm a parent, but it's not all about the fact that I'm a parent.
Gotcha.
And if I am going to feature him in some way, it's very rarely, if ever, just him. it's always the content is focused on my experience as a parent, and he may also be in it, but it's not like, look at this silly thing my kid did today as a YouTube video or just pictures of him on my Instagram page. It's more of, I'm so lucky that this is my life, and it's a photo of me that he may also be in. Or even with Nerds with Kids, we talked about this a lot as me, Lasercorn, and Ivan all being people that are front facing, not necessarily wanting that for our kids, but not being ashamed of them either. And it's a very fine line. So we very consciously made the decision that it's not kids of nerds, it's nerds with kids. So we are the subject matter of it.
You're point A.
And like a lot of the content that we do on there is about our struggles as parents. And they may also run in and out of frame because that's the reality of our lives. Less so than watch our kids do silly stunts or something like that.
Yeah.
But when we first started Nerds with Kids, a lot of our viewers were really skeptical of like, I can't believe you're making a kids channel right now with so many kids channels getting in trouble for being exploitative, and it's not really a cool scene. And we had to keep saying like, this isn't really a kids channel. This is a channel if you want to go along on this crazy ride that is us figuring out how to be parents and also do our jobs. So it is a very niche audience, but the folks that are there that are absolutely lovely, and so many of the viewers on that channel say, I don't even have kids, but I like watching you guys go through this because it's a more personal and intimate look at our lives than I think we put out on all the other channels that we work on.
That's the weird tipping point, I guess, or the cutting edge for where we are, right? Is that I feel like with our audience and us and our involvement in entertainment, right? The audiences we've grown that way expect you to be authentic and expect you, they already know who you are and they know how you're going to talk and deal with things. To see you go through something like that, right? Of you have a kid and how that changes. Like I was talking to some people this weekend about what I do, and they're like, "Oh, well, yeah, you skew really young because of video games." Like, no, we skew old because like people just stick with us. They like our journeys are their journeys, and like I know how many of the Kind of Funny best friends have kids and will tell me at a meet and greet, like, "Oh man, we can't wait for you to have kids. It's gonna be awesome to see you do this or do that." Or the vice versa, that you are younger and they see you doing it and they're like, "Well, now I have an idea of what it could look like," or I have the idea that it doesn't mean that I have to sacrifice everything that I love and I want to be part of.
Totally.
Yeah, and that's important, I think, to see those examples.
It's super important, and I think I always attribute it to a lot of people who were children of the 80s kind of being the first generation of the home console.
Sure.
A lot of gamers are aging up and moving into that next phase of life. So, you can have a demographic, even though you talk about gaming, you can have an older demographic. Like for me, I think a lot of my viewers have grown with me as well. And my probably average viewer is about 30.
Yeah.
Like 18 to 35 is my demographic sweet spot when I'm talking to people. And it's not 13 to 17 because I talk about games. It's realistically not. I also think that's because I look at it from a different perspective than a 13 to 17-year-old would. And my playthrough of a game will be different than like a Markiplier style, very animated, very excitable. Like I'm probably commenting on, the parental struggles in God of War, or I'm absolutely obsessed with the art style in such and such indie game. It's going to be a little different.
And that's, again, when I think about probably the far-flung days of when I do have a kid or whatever, right? But like how it will impact the content in that way, but like that I'm not scared of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not afraid of it, of Kind of Funny losing its voice or Greg Miller not having the same voice, because it'll just have like you're talking about. It's the same way. This is not the exact same way, but similar. Of when I talked about it recently on Gamescast of when I used to review PSP games. So many of my reviews would talk about, well, when I was on the train playing it, and so many people are like, I live in the Midwest. I'm not on a train every day, but I'm a commuter, and that's where I played my portable, right? In the same way of how the kids are going to be. And that's where the question of social media came up, because it is that thing. I live so publicly, and I love doing that. I love sharing my life and my adventures and, what Jen and I are doing, even though Andy hates it, on Instagram or whatever, on Twitter. When we get to having a child, I can't imagine a life of not sharing that, right? But I have friends who aren't even in our world, are doctors, are lawyers, whatever, and they won't put up photos of their kids. They'll put the stickies over their faces and stuff. And I'm always like, that's just so interesting to me, because it's just not how and I mean, more power to however you want to parent, however you want to, but just like, I can't imagine my experience in my life without sharing those moments. But then I don't also want to fuck it up. But I look, you talk about, Chobot, right? Chobot and Blair, like they share so much of Emerson's life. And from the outside, I love that the same way you're talking about it, right? Like if an idiot like Blair can be a good dad. I can be a good dad.
Aw, shout out to Blair.
One of the nicest human beings in the world.
But yeah, you know, and same thing for you, I imagine. You don't want your entire brand to become all about parenting.
Oh, yeah,
and I
yeah.
mean, is that something you and Jen have discussed? Like how open you're going to be with social media
Yeah,
when
but
you get to that
it's
point?
what you talk about, right? Like you
Yeah.
can have as many conversations as you want when
Yeah.
it's pie in the sky. You're drinking martinis on a Tuesday at Morton's. Yeah, you
I
can do
miss
it.
martinis on Tuesdays.
I know,
you don't
right?
do that anymore when
Yeah.
you have a tiny human.
Exactly. All that's fine, but like
Right.
everybody has a plan to like get punched in
Yep.
the face, and so like when we get there, who knows how we'll really feel? But it is that, you know, I joke around about it, like to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Again, I get to be so different because of Kind of Funny, but like there's gonna be shows for sure where something went wrong and the baby's in the bouncing baby Bjorn and I'm podcasting and it's got a problem and I walk off and I do, you know what I mean? Like I
Yep.
joke, it won't be like a real thing and it won't be exploitative, but it's going to be like, all right, something happened. This is how it's gotta be.
It's your life. When you get to that point, if you do put a tiny human in a baby Bjorn, may I suggest arms for Nintendo Switch and let the baby hold the controllers?
Sure.
And then you just like jam it out.
There you go.
as they
You're making
wiggle
content.
around
So you're making
and-
content.
Oh yeah, we did that on Nerds with Kids. It was pretty funny. Because we're trying to find video games that they can enjoy, but really mine is still way too young to enjoy any kind of video games. I gave him some kind of like app where like you pop the bubbles on the tablet to see what's behind it, and he's so not interested, like at all. And one of my big fears is that he's gonna grow up to be like, God, Mom, you're such a nerd.
Yes.
Like you and dad play. He'll be like, hockey, bruh. No offense to people that love hockey, but like I use hockey as an example of something that I would have a hard time relating to.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know that world at all. But I think about it and I think, you know what? My parents had no idea about Dungeons and Dragons or Magic cards or any of the nerdy stuff I was into as a kid. And a lot of kind of the way that they tried to steer me was into things they were more knowledgeable about.
Yeah.
And kind of fought the things that I was naturally interested in for a long time. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna improve upon that for the next generation and say whatever he is into, I want to support it fully.
Sure.
Like even if it's something I totally don't understand, you know, I'm and all kids are embarrassed of their parents. So
Yeah,
my husband and I constantly laugh that like he's going to be so embarrassed the fact that we like get together with friends on the weekends and play D&D. Like he's going to be so embarrassed of all of that. But hopefully video games are cool enough that I envision a time when he can sit down with mommy and play video games. I'm fingers crossed.
I mean, yeah, that's my dream and what you said before, my nightmare. That's my thing is my father, a heavy equipment operator, Chicago, blue collar, and like it was 6 a.m. He was out in the front yard doing stuff and he wouldn't be until 5 o'clock. And it's like, I'm the kid who was in the basement now. And he's like, you want to come cut the lawn and change the oil? I'm like, no, Dad, I don't want to do any of that. Right. And so it's like to jump the other way. And when it will be of like, hey, you want to play Destiny 5 or whatever? And he's like, no, Dad, I'm going to go play street hockey. Do you want to come? Like, no, I don't want to come play street hockey. You know what I mean?
But you know what? I'll say, but I'll come out and watch, honey.
Exactly. I'll sit
So-
there in my lawn chair playing my Switch 3 or whatever.
Precisely.
Exactly. Yeah. But and especially, I don't know if I know you're so busy and I'm just a clown.
Untrue.
I started this thing where I convinced Playmobil to send me all the current Ghostbuster toys.
Nice.
For my unborn, unconceived children. So I have the entire line of Ghostbuster Playmobil stuff socked away in the closet.
Amazing.
And it is that nightmare of like, what if this kid doesn't
Doesn't
care
like
about
Ghostbusters?
What if? Because
Oh my
and that's the thing
goodness.
is like, as much as you're, you know, oh, Dad loves it. Like I remember, like you rebel against it. You know what I mean? There's certain things you come together on. But like Donald Mustard, you know, from Epic. One of my favorite things he put up that like I was like, that's the future I want, right? It was actually Laura, I guess his wife, put up an Instagram post and it was in their basement, their game room, and it was 4 TVs like in a quadrant, right? One was running whatever sporting event was happening while it was happening, and the other 3 were Destiny. And it was the 2 boys and Donald playing Destiny, and I was like, that is like the dream, right?
That
of
is
like
the dream.
when the next Division 5 hits and it is like, here you go, you know, come play with me, girl. Whatever. I'm not gonna give away my kid names. Keeping those under my hat.
Your child will be named Girl.
Girl. I'm very inspired by Cory Barlog.
Yep,
Girl.
or you could do like me and do some kind of like my son's a Marvel mashup. His name is Logan Parker, and I
Logan
absolutely
Parker.
love it.
That is awesome.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And so then, of course, as a baby, anytime he didn't wear those silly baby mittens and scratched his face, I was like, I did this to myself. I did this to I named him after Wolverine. This was entirely my fault. And one of his first words that we taught him to say was snicked, because I'm an idiot like that.
That's awesome.
But so there are, you know, we're talking about how difficult it is to have children. Of course, there are wonderfully rewarding things about having tiny humans
I would
as
think
well.
the majority of it, right? Like, yeah.
At least That's where I am. I'd say half and half.
Okay.
I love him to death, and there are definitely moments where I'm like, oh, thank Odin, he's cute because he's driving me nuts. But then there are moments when I'm like, he's the best. I just want to be with him all the time. And there's this weird parent thing that happens, at least for me and my husband, where all day I'm kind of like, oh, I can't wait till this kid goes to bed so I can like watch a movie or answer emails or any of the million things I tried to do for myself that day that couldn't get done. And then he goes to bed and we would just sit there and look at pictures of cool stuff he did all day with each other on the couch until we go to sleep. Like, it's biology is weird.
Yeah.
And it is definitely there so that, you know, we keep them alive.
Yeah.
It's important. But yeah, I'm always looking for panels at Comic-Con and TwitchCon and stuff like that, now that there are more parents that do this, of how they navigate it, because I want to know. And, you know, I, like I said, was not the first. I reached out to Jess and Blair and was like, what did you guys do? Because everybody's journey is so different. But if you can take little pointers here and there from other people, that can be so helpful. Yeah, so helpful. I wish that I had gotten to use Lasercorn's pointer of let the baby sleep on you while you play Twitch. Or while you play your Switch. Yeah. That didn't happen for me.
That's a bad pointer. That's, you know, that's a very
No, it's a great pointer if it works for you.
Case.
He's like, yeah, just get the headphones and like, I'm like, oh, that sounds so nice.
That'd be beautiful if that could happen, but it's not gonna happen.
Sounds so nice. But yeah, it's it's fun that so many people are starting to have kids now, because now he has like little content creator baby friends.
The next generation.
If you will, the next generation.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of them are on social media all the time and some of them aren't. The one thing I will say that seems, what I see most often is people create Instagram profiles and stuff like that for their kids that are then privatized, except for to people they know in real life.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a nice way to do it, because then when they are of age, that they decide, you know, their parents decide this is okay for you to open this up. They already have all of this content and probably some followers and, you know, whatever at that point.
I've thought about that. Camping on names.
Right?
Game over, whatever the kid's name is. You know what I mean? Yeah, just have to sit there.
Well, that's like Lasercorn is baby corn is what the internet calls his son Tyler.
I'm sure he's gonna grow up and love that.
Hey, baby corn! Oh, god damn it!
I don't think it's his handle officially, but I don't think he has a specific account. But a lot of Logan's friends do, and let me tell you, their Instagrams are hopping. Yeah. So he might get some FOMO that I don't have one of those for him. But I'm like, dude, I have a hard time keeping up with my own.
I know, right? Yeah.
Social media platforms. I don't have time to do one for him. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll get there when you get there, sir.
So dumb question, I would assume based on the name alone, but your husband's a huge nerd too.
Yeah, but in different ways.
Okay.
So he's a big fantasy and tabletop gaming nerd.
Okay.
But that being said, not super into video games.
Oh, okay.
So we don't game together. Okay. Unless I really like twist his arm.
Sure.
But he's doing me a favor if we game together. He also doesn't really like being front facing as far as social media and being on camera and that kind of stuff. So when I'm like, hey, you know what would really help is like if once a week we Twitch stream together so that I didn't feel like I was taking time away from us time, but also I could get some more hours into my Twitch channel. And he's like, most of the time he's like, hard pass.
Like,
thanks for the invite, baby, but like hard pass. So, you know, when people say like, oh, have you played this co-op game together? No. I tried to get him to play Divinity Original Sin 2 with me because I was like, you like tabletop gaming? This is as close of a port as tabletop D&D as you're going to get in a video game that I've experienced, and I really think you'll like it. We played for a few hours, and he was like, I'm done. I'd rather just be playing real D&D. I'm like, cool, I get that, but I'd really like you to play this with me.
Listen, this marriage is compromised, and you're compromising and playing this game.
Right? But I would say he's a bigger Star Wars nerd than I am, and for our honeymoon, we went to Hobbiton in New Zealand because we both share a very, very large love of Lord of the Rings.
Very nice.
And the Tolkien verse. So
yeah. Was he a Marvel fan too for Logan Parker, or was it just like whatever you want, babe?
No, he's a Marvel. He's a Marvel fan as well. Okay. Yeah, he big Cap fan, big Thor fan.
Nice.
So yeah, and it's funny when people meet him that know me first, they kind of always assume that I got him into this stuff, which he takes lots of offense to. Of course, I feel like as any spouse or partner does. you know, when you meet them and they're like, oh, but you do that too? And it's like, yes, I have a life before my spouse or partner.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times you hear outrage of that coming from the female, and in my relationship, it's the opposite. It's him. I played D&D since high school. But it's not all her, I swear. But yeah, it's really funny. But I'm glad that we can share those things together, and so that Logan can call us nerds one day when he gets older.
Flips his hair. I'm going to band practice. Bye, Mom and Dad.
Yeah. Are there any things that you particularly love that Jen can't get down with?
Well, I mean, I play way more games than Jen does.
Yeah.
Jen plays games, but she's very particular about her games.
Got it.
She'll see me start something, and I'm like, babe, maybe you'd like to play. No, not going to. Oh, God. All right, fine. So it's like Borderlands 3 is like the one where she's like, I loved Borderlands before, but I played it on. This is always her thing with shooters. I played it on PC. So I can't deal with the inaccuracy of a controller. I'm like,
get that.
Guess what? You're gonna learn to deal with it, Jen. You're playing Borderlands 3 co-op with me.
Yeah, I won't play on a controller unless there's aim assist.
Get out of here.
But I'm awful at shooters regardless, whether keyboard, mouse, or controller. So what do I know?
Yeah.
My demo of Borderlands 3 at E3, I didn't finish it in the allotted time.
You're like, this is good. See ya. Like, you're only halfway through.
This is as far as I got because I died like 25 times, but you know.
Yeah. No, yeah, like Jen plays games, but just doesn't play the assortment that I do. You know what I mean? She's very dialed into what she wants to play. I think she's like some ridiculous amount now of Stardew Valley on Switch. Which she had played. She had a ridiculous amount on PlayStation 4, and now she had a ridiculous on Switch, and all that's going on.
I love Stardew Valley. Great game.
Yeah.
Great game.
Never clicked for me.
She likes indies?
Oh, yeah. That's what her job is. I mean, she's brand manager, and Papa Janda works pretty much strictly with indies.
Yeah.
Actually, strictly with indies.
I get it. Indies are my jam, too.
Yeah, well, there you go. Talk to her about our styles on it.
Just finished Sea of Solitude. Liked it a lot.
What'd you think? Yeah, Andrea, I saw her talking about it. Loved it. She talked about it in Gamescast. I haven't gotten to it yet.
It was interesting. I read a lot of mixed reviews on it.
Yeah.
But I read those reviews after I played it.
Yeah.
Or no, maybe when I was about halfway through. But I had a really good time with it. I thought it was really quite lovely, and, you know, delving into the depths of, you know, what that kind of mental illness can feel like when you're going through stuff like that was very eye-opening to me. So I thought it was very impactful. And in general, I like games that make you feel something.
Yep.
And this certainly fits in that category.
And that's why it's on my list to play. Like, it was, I feel it reminded me a lot of Gris. Did you see this one, right?
Yes.
The beautiful watercolor.
Oh, yeah, GRIS, Gris. I always think like Cree, but I'm like, no,
people yell at me when I say
Gris.
it wrong. I used to say Gris.
I used to say that too. No. It does remind you a lot of Gris.
But that was my thing where I played it, and I forget how many hours I put in, and it was not even a long game, but I didn't finish it. And I came back, and I was like, I didn't like it because it's not entertaining, but I don't think it's trying to be. It's a work of art, and it wants you to take something and put. And I was like, I get it. It's just not clicking for me. You know, art is on or off sometimes for people.
Right.
Whereas like Sea of Solitude, everything I've heard where it's like, oh, it's not much game, but I'm like the subject matter and the visuals seem awesome, and I want to go play.
I think you'll probably have a similar experience that you did with Gris, because Gris, I would have just played that game for the watercolor art style alone because I loved that so much. But it's the storyline that keeps you coming back to both, not necessarily the game mechanics.
Yeah, exactly right. That was the thing of like the platforming in Gris. I was like, whatever, okay.
Yeah, it was fine. And when you do play Sea of Solitude, it is not really a platformer. I mean, it feels more like a narrative genre game.
And that's what I want. That does speak to me and does make me think I'm going to like it. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I liked it a lot, even though there were definitely parts of, because I streamed the whole thing on my Twitch channel, there were parts of my stream that I was like, please don't let this be this. I don't know if I can continue if this is this, because since having a tiny human, any games that have anything to do with little kids being hurt affect me way differently than they did before. Not to say that before I was like, yay, kid's getting hurt.
Fuck this kid.
Right. But I mean, before I was like, that's horrible. I can't believe they did this. I got to get that bad guy. Now it's almost like a trigger where everything shuts down when it happens in a game, and when it surprises me in a game, especially like in What Remains of Edith Finch.
Sure.
That I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a chapter that has to do with a toddler. And when I got to that on stream, I was like, I know what I'm supposed to do to progress this game, and I don't think I can do it.
Yeah.
Like it shuts me down. Or that Dragon Cancer, like a game like that.
Yeah, right.
Fortunately, I played that before becoming a parent, because there's no way I could have gotten through it now.
Yeah.
But it affects me very differently. Now, that being said, sometimes it affects me in ways that are kind of humorous. Like God of War, it made me so ragey. Like I was like, oh, did you say something bad about my kid? I swear to, like, I'm going to murder you so hard, in a very primal way. As if someone looked at my tiny human wrong, Like I was just saying this on Jess Chobot's new podcast with her recently, that it's this weird primal rage that as a parent you don't expect. And I don't know if it affects moms and dads different because I'm not a dad, but like for me, it's like, I almost died bringing that human into this world. How dare you say anything negative against them or make me think you're going to hurt them or anything. Like it's this very mama bear, super primal caveman instinct of like, oh, something's going to hurt my offspring. I need to murder it now.
Sure, yeah.
So my husband always jokes around that someday I'm going to be in jail because that will have kicked in and I will have
Jury will
murdered
get
somebody.
you off. Jury, they'll let you off for that. They'll understand.
For mom stuff.
Yeah.
You're off for mom stuff. It's okay.
Now, did you legitimately almost die, or just the act of childbirth, which could kill you? Like, was there a close call?
I had a very tough delivery.
Oh, I don't know if I knew this.
Yeah, I talked about it, I think, in like a Naked Truth vlog, but only once, and it's not something I talk about very often. But it was.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, no. It was really hard, and I think not enough people talk about it.
Sure.
Everyone just kind of writes it off as, women have been having babies for thousands of years.
No
You'll
risk.
be fine, no big deal. Without talking about how terrifying that day is for almost everybody I know.
Yeah.
And you never want to say that to someone. There's two theories on this. There's some women that are like, oh, let me tell my horror story to all parents to be so that they're informed. But then there's also they are going through this whether they like it or not, so maybe you shouldn't scare the shit out of them ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I told my story once for the people who want to know it, and the truncated version of it for this show is that when I got to the moment where it was time to push, they didn't realize until I started pushing that the cord was wrapped around his neck 3 times.
Oh my God.
So every time I pushed, his heart rate and oxygen levels would plummet. And at that point, I had already been in labor for like 15 hours, which is pretty common for a first-time pregnancy, believe it or not. So I was completely like drained and just using every ounce of my concentration and energy to try to push, and I couldn't see it because I was so focused, but my husband could see it, that that the baby's levels were dropping dramatically and it was getting very dangerous at this point. So rather than, I guess, push him back in and do an emergency C-section, my doctor made the call to get this baby out now, no matter what that took. And fortunately for our doctors, he got here safe, and I am still here to talk about it. But I am still dealing with issues from that delivery now 2.5 years later. Wow. So it's a very real thing that people don't talk about. And it's funny because when I talk about some of the issues that I deal with now with other women who have had babies, you wouldn't believe the amount of them that are like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, nobody talks about that. So it's really colored, not to get political because I don't get political publicly, but it's really colored my view of some specific political issues that may seem very black and white, but after having gone through certain things, you're like, there's a lot of complexity here and there's a lot of gray here. So yeah, it's once you've lived through it, it changes your opinion of things. It's not quite so easy to say like, oh, just have a baby. That being said, for some people, they just have a baby, and it's great for them. I have friends who, you'll see like sitting Indian style 3 hours after they've given birth, and I'm like, oh my God, good for you. I couldn't sit for like 2.5 months. So, there's a difference there. But everybody's journey is so different. But it is definitely pretty terrifying. There was an SNL skit that I saw, the Mother's Day SNL skit, if anybody saw it,
I've seen
where it's like the dad opens the door and he's like, Happy Mother's Day, sweetheart. And mom's in bed, and it's like, look what we made for you. And the kid comes in with breakfast in bed on a tray, and the kid lovingly looks at his mom and says, tell me about the day I was born. And it just does this jump cut back and forth between the beautiful story she's telling him and what actually happened in that room that day. And it's so realistic. It's just basically like mom and dad both in complete panic mode, screaming, like all this stuff, but telling the kid like, it was the happiest day of my life, all that kind of stuff. So there are definitely two sides to it, and the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Jeez. I think since our first date, Jen's been talks about kids. If she brings it up, she talks about the horror stories she's heard. And I don't know. And I think it's her trying to like psych herself up of like, this is the worst thing that could happen to my body, and if it does, I know it, and I'm ready, and I'm okay with that, and like, there's surgeries that could do things. I'm like, all right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Yep. Oh, that's real. So anyway, my first Mother's Day. out in public. So he was born in February and Mother's Day is what, in May. So he was a couple months old. I was just getting to the point where I could sit comfortably. And we went out for Mother's Day that morning. And you know how I think all I wanted was to go to a diner in my pajamas. That's what I wanted for Mother's Day. Nice. So we did that for breakfast and took the baby in the car seat. And the diner we went to was giving all moms who came in like a little flower to pin on their shirt. It was very sweet. But let me tell you, I looked at everyone with a flower like, you're a goddamn superhero. Like I looked at moms so differently. Yeah. Like I was like, from like hats off, and I called my mom and I was like, you're a goddamn superhero. Like it's such a different light once you've been through it that I don't think you can really understand, even if you hear all the stories, until you're in it.
You're a superhero.
Thanks, man.
Trisha, it's time for you to go to the friend zone. This, of course, is where patreon.com/kindafunny people can go over there and post questions for you. Silver Lobo has the first one. It says, what's your favorite memory from working at SourceFed Nerd?
Oh, man. There are so many good ones. That was really such a fun, wonderful group of people that came together. Hats off to the folks who originally put the OG6 together in that casting studio, because we were like the perfect Scooby gang of personalities.
Sucks the rest of them washed out of the industry and never really went anywhere.
You know, never went anywhere. They're not big at all. But no, I would say my favorite memories have to probably be maybe the series I did with Steve Zaragoza called GTA Noobs, where we also did Minecraft Noobs, but GTA was particularly funny, where Steve and I just lovingly embraced the fact that this is not a game that we normally play, and sat down and went on all sorts of adventures together, that some of which were things we had heard you could do in GTA but never actually tried, some things we made up out of our heads and found out you couldn't actually do in GTA, but all sorts of adventures that were then cut into some of the funniest highlight cuts. And I just remember doing that show and laughing so hard I was in tears almost every single episode.
That's a good feeling.
So yeah, that was really funny. But we did so much fun stuff there. And yeah, a lot of my best memories there, honestly, are moments that I shared with Steve Zaragoza. He's a wonderful human being, and we had a very brother-sister relationship by the end of that show, especially.
Now, you just talked to Steve not too long ago, but Phil Online writes in and says, how much do you still talk or hang out with the old SourceFed coworkers?
So Meg moved to Texas years ago to do cool stuff with Rooster Teeth. You may have heard of them.
Once or twice, I don't know.
But I don't get to see her that often because of that. But the Valley Folk crew, the rest of the SourceFed crew, I do see fairly often, and I get to talk to every now and then and collab with as often as possible. And I mean, they all went much more so the comedy route and kind of the stand-up route, so their careers went in different places than mine did, for sure.
They're going to be on that NBC show soon.
Yeah,
I see them all on Instagram about that. Yeah, that's exciting.
I'm really excited for them. That should be really, really cool, and I can't wait to DVR them and be like, look, my friends are on TV. But I recently did their podcast, and we just kind of look back at the SourceFed times and laugh, because all of us were hired for hosting jobs, not realizing we were going to be producing and writing and developing content and all this other stuff that digital entailed, because besides Joe, none of us had a digital content background.
Yeah.
We thought we were coming in to read some stuff off a prompter, and boy,
easy
were
peasy.
we wrong.
Yeah, right?
Nope, not at all. And so, we all kind of went through this trial by fire of learning YouTube from the very beginning, and we were fortunate enough to learn from Phil, who's one of the best of the best, and it was a really interesting, life-changing experience for all of us. So having gone through that together, we all feel a very familial bond, and I think we all always will.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mitch Craston writes in to patreon.com/kindafunny and says, this will be interesting, because I think the first part you kind of touched on. How do you go about choosing which projects to take on? And then how often do you turn projects down? So are you still in the movie? You talked about it in the very beginning, Hamburglar, whatever, I'm going to work, I'm going to do it. Is that still your mindset now, or are you more choosy with things?
I am a little bit more choosy with things now. And I say a little bit because I still have that same no shame attitude of I will take a ridiculous job. Now I just get to be choosy about which ridiculous jobs I take. So I might still take a Hamburglar if it seemed fun at the time. But I'm fortunate enough to be at a place where I get job inquiries a lot. But I would say most of the stuff that I turn down now is either hosting shows that I don't feel I'm right for.
Sure.
should a show come up that's all about Kardashian gossip or something like that, that's not my jam.
Force it, yeah.
It's not my jam. It's not what I do. And honestly, there are many people who are much better versed that deserve that job more than me.
Sure.
And same thing with brand deals or any influencer deals. I will never partner with a brand that I don't believe in wholeheartedly. And because I am a female, I get a lot of jobs inquiring about, like, can you do this Instagram ad for our lipstick? And it's like, I don't really use makeup even that much on my own, like this isn't something I could say this lipstick's great, but I don't try enough lipsticks to know if this lipstick's great. Not to mention my 80% male audience from talking about tech and video games probably doesn't care that this lipstick's great. So those would be things that I would either straight turn down or suggest a friend.
Help find the friends, collaboration.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then final one comes from PS Wee, who writes in and says, if your precious mini human, and then parentheses TM, grows up to love video games, what are some games you'd want to show him first? Love you, Trish Hart.
Oh, hi, PS Wee. What are some games I would want to show him first?
That's a tough question, too, because what age are they where does he fall into, right?
Right. So I would say age-appropriate games first, something that I think he is apt to like, because I would hate to introduce him to the wrong game and then have him hate video games forever, and it's all my fault because I picked the wrong game to introduce him to at first. But it's hard because some of the games that I hold near and dear to my heart maybe haven't aged so well.
Oh, yeah, totally right.
Or especially at the point that he's playing, figure 5-6 years from now, graphics will probably be mind-blowing, even more mind-blowing than they are now. And if I take him back and I'm like, this is Paperboy on the NES,
it's this is annoyingly hard. I hate this.
He might have zero interest in that game. I have no idea. I would like to think that once I expose him to enough titles that he falls in love with gaming in my dream scenario, then I could take him back to some of my retro faves and introduce him to Myst or Paperboy, or play through some Bubble Bobble with Mommy, maybe. But first I would expose him to whatever was age appropriate that I think would grab his attention.
Do you think you'll stay current? Because that's always, I do have friends who talk about it in our industry who are like, I'm going to start with an NES and then slowly work them up. My thought, I'm like, man, that's great for you. I don't have that love for retro games, number one, but also the fact that he's gonna see me or she's gonna see me playing PlayStation 5, whatever, right? They're gonna know that that's what Dad's controller is. I feel like I'd have to find stuff in that ecosystem.
I also feel like he's gonna see the games his friends has.
Yeah.
And if he's used to playing 8-bit or 16-bit, and then sees the amazing, mind-blowing ray tracing technology that's out there now, he might be like, okay, your games suck. And I don't want that to happen either. So yeah, I feel like it would be a mix of retro and new, and I do have an intense love for retro games because that's where I first fell in love, and the nostalgia's real. Yeah. But that might not be enough to grab his attention after being it's the age-old, what order do you show them Star Wars?
Sure.
Question.
Just make him watch Ghostbusters.
Because if you start just make him watch Ghostbusters instead.
There is no Star Wars, just Ghostbusters.
Oh, that's untrue. Why not both?
Because I want to make sure they like that. I'm going to be like, they perfected movies with this one movie. That's the only movie there is.
It's so funny. We have a mutual appreciation of the OG Ghostbusters, and that was one of the things that my parents were kind of flabbergasted and didn't know what to do with me as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you ever had this. There was some Ghostbusters book, paperback book that I had as a kid that had a Ghostbusters fan club membership card in the back that you could write your name on and punch out.
Sure.
I carried that thing with me everywhere as a kid. But my parents, my mom specifically, were a little more traditional, and they were like, but here's My Little Ponies and Barbies. And I was like, Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters, because that's just the kid I was. But yeah, I had my Proton Pack with the Nerf yellow thing and the kick out trap and my Ghostbusters fan card with me wherever I went. So anytime you talk about your love of Ghostbusters, I am right there with you.
Kindred spirits.
Kindred spirits, indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
Trisha, I love you so much. Thank you for making time to come up here with us.
Thank you for having me. This is really awesome.
Where can people keep up with you if they're listening on audio? Because we've had your tag up there. There it is right there.
Thank you. If you're listening on audio, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ThatGRLTrish. So it's that girl Trish without an I in the girl. And on YouTube and Twitch /Trisha Hershberger.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been We Have Cool Friends. We Have Them. It's a show we do each and every Monday. Go watch the backlog, watch the stuff coming up. Subscribe to youtube.com/kindafunny. Support us on patreon.com/kindafunny. Find it on podcast services around the internet. One day Spotify, right, Kevin?
Yep, someday.
Fucking just push the buttons more, Kevin.
I can't. There's only so many of them.
Until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.